Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my $19 rundown best bet, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Tuesday in Major League Baseball. First up, it's the Atlanta Braves taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. We're going to see Spencer Strider and Ranger Suarez on the mound in this one. I do think there's a lot of games on Tuesday in Major League Baseball that I would consider coin flip or 50-50 type games. And in those types of games, I would rather take the team getting plus money. And right now we see the Phillies getting plus 120 on the money line. I think it's pretty valuable. Ranger Suarez is in good form. Spencer Strider is not, that's for sure. Ranger Suarez's last 4 starts, he's gone at least 6 innings, and he's given up 2 earned runs or fewer. So all quality starts against some decent teams along the way. The Mets have hit lefties well. The Nationals have hit lefties well. The Dodgers, we know, have crushed lefties this year. And the Diamondbacks in his last game on the road. So I think Suarez, facing a Braves team that has absolutely dominated against right-handed pitching, but has been right around league average against lefties, I think Suarez is going to have a decent outing. He's got a .9 ERA in June. He's keeping the ball on the ground. He's missing some bats as of late, 15 strikeouts in his last 13 innings. So I think Suarez will be okay in this game. Spencer Strider, we know, is not pitching very well. His last 2 starts, 9 innings of work against the Mets and the Tigers. 13 earned runs, 15 base hits, and 5 home runs is the big concern for me. He's getting up at least 1 home run in each of his last 5 games, and the walks are starting to pile up a little bit. We know the strikeouts are always going to be there. He's always going to miss bats. He's got 14 Ks his last 9 innings, but the home run ball has really hurt him lately. The Phillies have made some improvements offensively as of late. There's a team that strikes out a good amount of time, so I think Strider will still be able to miss a lot of bats in this one. But I think the Phillies could get to him for a home run or 2, and that could be enough to win this game with how well Ranger Suarez has pitched. Getting plus money, to me, I got to take the Phillies on the money line. It's Bank Park. Next up, we see the Baltimore Orioles taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Kyle Bradish and Tyler Glasnow are your starters. I do think this is going to be a really entertaining series between the 2 best teams in the American League East. And, Tyler Glasnow, I do think, is the better starting pitcher in this matchup. I do think the Orioles have the advantage in the bullpen, though. So, I'm looking at this game in the first 5 innings. I would rather take Tampa Bay in the first 5 than take them in the full game, because if this is a close game late, I do think Baltimore has the advantage in that bullpen. Kyle Bradish, as of late, pretty inconsistent in his strikeout numbers. We saw 5 innings of 10 strikeout baseball against the Brewers on June 8th. He follows it up with 7 innings of 1 strikeout ball against the Blue Jays. Now, overall, Bradish has been solid this year, but a 4.6 ERA on the road isn't great in 31 1/3 road innings. A lot of base hits and a lot of base runners in general given up away from Camden Yards for Bradish. And the Rays, we know, are one of the tougher lineups to face as a right-handed pitcher this season. So I do think Bradish struggles early on. I think Glasnow is the better option. He's got a 3.43 ERA to start this season. His last game, he didn't even have his best stuff, but he still went 5 1/3 innings of 3-run ball with 6 strikeouts. It was good enough for the Rays to win that game and cover the run line in the end, 6-3. The Rays have won each of the last 3 starts that Glasnow has made, and they cover the run line in all 3 of those games as well. I think the Rays at least have the lead at the end of the first 5, but like I said, if it's a close game late, Baltimore could take it. So give me the Rays in the first 5 innings on the money line. Next up, we see the Kansas City Royals taking on the Detroit Tigers. Daniel Lynch and Michael Lorenzen are your starters. And I know Michael Lorenzen's not as good at Comerica Park as he has been on the road, but I still think he's the better option here, facing a really weak Royals lineup and a bad Royals bullpen, with Daniel Lynch on the mound for Kansas City to start this game, coming off his worst start of the season by far. 7 innings, 7 earned runs, 7 base hits, and 4 home runs in a 7-4 Royals loss. The Royals have lost each of his last 3 starts now, and you're facing a Tigers team that's top 10 in baseball in team OPS and number 6 in baseball in isolated power against lefties in the last 30 days, with a high walk rate at 11.1%, which is third best in baseball, and a strikeout rate at 18.7%, which is pretty low. So I think the Tigers get to Daniel Lynch early and often. I think Lorenzen's good enough here, so give me the Detroit Tigers at home on the money line. Next up, we see the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Miami Marlins. Yusei Kikuchi and Yuri Perez are your starters. This is a tough game for me. I've kind of gone back and forth with this one, as there's not even an official lineup for this game, so we could see a pitching change. But if Yuri Perez and Kikuchi are the starters, we've seen Yuri Perez really impress so far. 4-1 record with a 1.8 ERA, a 1.09 WHIP, 36 strikeouts in 35 innings. He's been consistent this year. He's been good at home. He's been good on the road. His last start, 6 innings of no earned run, only 2 hit baseball with 6 strikeouts and a 4-1 win over the Mariners. But I do think the Blue Jays, when you look at their numbers against righties, they've been very solid. They've been one of the tougher lineups to face as a righty in the last month or so. I do think this is one of the toughest matchups that Perez has had so far at the major league level. The Blue Jays are number 4 in baseball in team OPS in the last 30 days with a very low strikeout rate. So when you look at Perez's matchups, yes, he had to pitch at Coors Field on May 23rd, and yes, he had to pitch against the Angels on the road on May 28th. But outside of those 2 games, it's been pretty easy matchups. The first game in his major league career was against the Cincinnati Reds. We know the Reds have been better as of late, but at the time, May 12th, they really weren't hitting right into pitchers very well. Perez was okay in that game, 4 2/3 innings, 2 home runs allowed. Then he faced the Nationals, not a great lineup. The A's on June 3rd, we know one of the worst teams in baseball. The White Sox have not been great against righties. And then the Mariners last time out, where we know Seattle has struggled with their strikeout rate this year as a team. So like I said, this is the toughest matchup. You could argue one of the tougher matchups so far for Perez. Yusei Kikuchi is a lefty. The Marlins have hit lefties pretty well this season, but their isolated power has not been great as of late. Kikuchi's somebody that does have issues giving up sharp contact, so maybe with the Marlins not really doing too well in the power department, this could be a decent spot for Kikuchi. Like I said, there's a lot of contradicting information in this game. Kikuchi's not been great on the road, so you got to take that into consideration. For me, I'm going to lean towards the Marlins because I do think Perez is the better starter. I don't love the fact that Kikuchi has struggled on the road with that 4.57 ERA, and Miami has a low strikeout rate and a good OPS rate against lefties this season. So I'm going to take the Miami Marlins here in a lean, but a game I'm not touching. Next up, it's the Seattle Mariners taking on the New York Yankees. George Kirby and Garrett Cole are your starters in this one. I like the under in this game. The Yankees lineup without Aaron Judge has just not been the same. We saw George Kirby pitch against these Yankees not too long ago. He went 8 innings of scoreless baseball with 7 strikeouts, no walks, and only 3 base hits. That was a 1-0 final score in extra innings, so a very low-scoring game in that one. Garrett Cole's pitched well this year, 2.75 ERA. Struggled a little bit towards the end of May, but in the month of June so far, 6 innings, 1 run, 6 innings, 2 runs, and 6 innings, 1 run in his first 3 outings. So all quality starts with a good amount of strikeouts and only 1 home run allowed to go with it. The Mariners in the last 30 days against right-handed pitchers, like I said, a pretty high strikeout rate as a team, where right now they're 3rd highest at 26.6%. Their OPS is ranked 24th in the league. I can't really trust either of these offenses right now, so you can take the under in the first 5, but I like the under in the full game as well. Give me the under Yankees Mariners. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Washington Nationals. Jordan Montgomery and Mackenzie Gore are your starters. I like the Nationals in the first 5 innings of this game. Mackenzie Gore is coming off a nice outing against the Astros. It was a bounce-back start after he struggled against the Braves. He went 5 2/3 innings of shutout baseball against a very good Houston Astros team against lefties. And now you're facing a team in the St. Louis Cardinals that in the month of June so far, they're dead last in baseball in team OPS and isolated power against lefties with really dreadful numbers. So I think Gore will pitch well in this game. I think Jordan Montgomery could also struggle here, as the Nationals' numbers as of late against lefties haven't been the best, but overall this year, pretty solid numbers, especially that low strikeout rate. I think the Nationals' ability to limit strikeouts and put the ball in play virtually every at-bat is going to hurt Jordan Montgomery, a guy who has 13 strikeouts in his last 12 1/3 innings, but his last start gave up 7 base hits, 2 walks really early in that game, a lot of base runners for the Giants. He gave up only 3 runs in the end, but it was still a Cardinals loss 8-5. I do think that the Cardinals struggle in this one offensively. I think Gore gives the Nationals 5-6 good innings. I don't trust this Nationals bullpen, so that's why I'm going to take the Nationals in the first 5 innings on the money line. Next up, it's the Chicago Cubs taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Marcus Stroman and Johan Oviedo are your projected starters. Marcus Stroman's got better numbers at Wrigley Field, but not by much. A 2.72 ERA still on the road this year, a 3-1 record in 39 2/3 innings, and only 1 home run allowed on the road. I think he's good enough here. He just faced these Pittsburgh Pirates back on June 15th. He was 6 innings, 2 runs, 5 strikeouts, so a quality outing. Another Cubs victory and a Marcus Stroman start. He's been winning games left and right for Chicago this year. Johan Oviedo struggled a bit against these Cubs back on June 15th, so the same pitching matchup. 4 1/3 innings of work, 8 base hits, 4 earned runs. He had 8 strikeouts in that game, but the Pirates have just not done too well in his starts this season, especially in the last month or so. I do think the Cubs will be able to take this one, so give me the Chicago Cubs on the money line on the road. Next up, it's the Colorado Rockies taking on the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to see Kyle Freeland and Ben Lively on the mound in this one. The Rockies have really struggled away from home going into Monday's games, a 13-26 record on the road. And Kyle Freeland's also not pitched well on the road this year. He's got a 5.92 ERA. His last start at Atlanta went 4 1/3 innings, 9 base hits, and 7 earned runs. 3 walks to go with it, and an 8-3 Rockies loss. The Rockies have now lost each of the last 4 starts for Freeland, and 3 of those 4 games were on the road. Now, I know that last start was against Atlanta, one of the best lineups in baseball, but the Cincinnati Reds against left-handed pitchers, they've been pretty solid in the month of June so far. They are right now 9th in baseball in isolated power, so I do think that the Reds will be able to get to Freeland. Ben Lively's not my favorite starting pitcher to back, but he's been decent so far in the role that he's played. He's got a 4.07 ERA in 42 innings. He's got decent strikeout stuff. I don't love the fact that he's given up 20 base hits in his last 2 games combined, but like I said, this Rockies team on the road, their offense has suffered. Their bullpen's not good, and Kyle Freeland's not been trustworthy away from Coors. So I'm going to take the Cincinnati Reds on the money line at Great American Ballpark. Next up, it's the Oakland Athletics taking on the Cleveland Guardians. We're going to see Luis Medina and Aaron Savale on the mound in this one. Now, Luis Medina's got 7.55 ERA this season, but an even steeper 9.36 ERA away from home. And, he's been able to miss a good amount of bats, 37 strikeouts and 39 in the third innings of work. Not too bad in the strikeout department. But the Cleveland Guardians are a lineup that's got one of the lower strikeout rates in baseball this season and last year against right-handed pitchers. So I just don't love this spot for Medina at all. I do think the Guardians will be able to get to him early and often. And I also, I know the A's bullpen has been one of the worst in baseball in, overall this year and in the last 30 days. So I don't love this matchup at all for the A's pitching staff in general. But Aaron Savale is also somebody that I do expect to regress quite a bit as the season continues. He struggled so far at Progressive Field. His last start on the road, he only went 3 2/3 innings because he gave up 4 walks and 2 home runs early on to San Diego. I think the A's offense has shown, it's been a lot more competitive in the last couple of weeks, especially when they went on that win streak, than it was towards the beginning of the season. So I think they put up a fight offensively. I'm going to take the over here in Oakland, Cleveland. Next up, it's the Boston Red Sox taking on the Minnesota Twins. Cutter Crawford and Bailey Ober are your starters. I'm leaning towards the over in this game. I watched Bailey Ober's last start against the Milwaukee Brewers. He went 6 innings, 2 runs, and 7 strikeouts. A quality start. On paper, it looks like a really good outing. It was a 4-2 Twins win. But I watched that game. When Bailey Ober, he doesn't really walk a lot of guys. He throws a lot of strikes, but sometimes when he misses inside the zone and right down the heart of the plate. We saw that a few times in those at-bats against the Brewers, and we saw Milwaukee hit 2 home runs in that game, and I thought they could have hit a few more with the way that Bailey Ober was pitching in that one. And I like the fact that he doesn't walk a lot of batters, but the Boston Red Sox offense has been pretty solid against right-handed pitchers overall this year, and we're starting to see them heated up a little bit offensively. We saw in that Yankee series this weekend, and I do think that the Red Sox will be able to get to Ober for a few extra base hits and potentially home runs early in this game. And Cutter Crawford on the other side, he's been really good as a reliever out of the bullpen, but in the starting pitching role this year, not so great. His last 2 games were both starts for the Red Sox. Both of those games were losses for Boston, 5-2 and 7-6. And he went 7 innings combined, giving up 11 base hits, 6 earned runs, another unearned run, 3 walks to go with it. So he really wasn't the sharpest in those games before pitching really well out of the bullpen. I worry about that in this matchup against a solid Twins lineup, and they've hit righties better than lefties this year. So give me the over here in the full game between the Boston Red Sox and the Minnesota Twins. Next up, we see the Arizona Diamondbacks taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. Ryan Nelson and Colin Ray are your starters. Neither of these guys are my favorite options to back on the mound in terms of starting pitching, but I do think Colin Ray is the better option. Ryan Nelson has been solid on the road this year with a 3.09 ERA compared to Chase Field, where he's really struggled. But still, in those 32 road innings, only 23 strikeouts. He doesn't miss a lot of bats, and he does give up a lot of sharp contact. We saw that in the last game against the Phillies. 4 innings of work, 10 base hits, and 5 earned runs with a home run in that game in a 5-4 Arizona loss. Colin Ray, his last start against the Twins, you look at the final line, 5 innings, 4 earned runs against Minnesota. He did walk 3 batters, which is not ideal, but I also thought it was kind of an unlucky outing for him. It was really just 1 bad inning. It was the 3rd inning, 4 runs allowed, and I thought Brian Anderson really had a bad day in right field in that game defensively. He was not playing not really playing the fly balls correctly. And it's tough to play in Minnesota with that weird, really tall right field. The ball was hitting off the wall at really weird angles, and the ball was rolling forever. It was just a bad day for Brian Anderson out there, and it didn't help Colin Ray's start at all. I do think Ray, though, before that, pitched really well against the Orioles. 5 innings, 8 strikeouts, no earned runs. He has been better as of late than he was at the beginning of the season, and I do think he's the better option here. I like the fact that the Brewers play really good baseball at home, so I'm going to take a shot here with the Milwaukee Brewers on the money line. Next up, we see the New York Mets taking on the Houston Astros. Justin Verlander and Framber Valdez are your starters. Now, it's tough to know what you're going to get from either of these offenses right now. You know, the Astros missing Yordan Alvarez in the lineup. The Mets have been so inconsistent this year offensively. You know, they have been better against lefties as of late, but Framber Valdez is one of the best lefties in baseball, and he's got really good numbers at home this year with a 2.02 ERA and 58 innings at Minute Maid Park with only 2 home runs allowed and 59 strikeouts. So it's tough to go against Framber here, but Justin Verlander's coming off a nice bounce-back outing himself against the New York Yankees in that Subway Series. He went 6 innings of 1 run, 6 strikeout baseball. The Mets went on to win that game 4-3, the final score. Verlander facing his former team. I think he'll pitch well in this game. I'm going to take the under here in the Mets-Astros ballgame. Next up is the Texas Rangers taking on the Chicago White Sox. Nathan Eovaldi and Dylan Cease on the mound. And this one, you know, Dylan Cease, it's good to see him start to miss some more bats recently. His last 2 games, 11 and a third innings combined with 17 strikeouts against the Marlins and Dodgers. And he's pitched well in both of those games, but he's also somebody that, you know, with being a strikeout-dependent guy and also having some control issues, usually his pitch count goes up early in ball games, and we don't really see him pitch too deep into games very often. So that's my big concern for him in this start is the Rangers have a really good lineup against right-handed pitchers, and the White Sox bullpen's just not been very trustworthy this season. So if Cease only goes 5-6 innings at the most, I don't really love the White Sox chances in the end with Nathan Eovaldi on the other side and a very good Rangers lineup. Nathan Eovaldi on the road this year, 6-1 record with a 1.98 ERA, 50 strikeouts and 54 2/3 innings. And the most impressive thing for me is somebody that's given up some home runs in his career, Nathan Eovaldi. We saw him give up a ton of home runs last year. Only 1 home run allowed on the road in those 54 2/3 innings. I think Eovaldi's good enough here. Give me the Texas Rangers on the money line. Next up, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the San Francisco Giants. We're going to see Anthony DeSclafani on the mound for San Francisco. No official starter for the Padres right now. Anthony DeSclafani has just not been the same pitcher recently. Really, in his last 5 starts, 4 earned runs or more in 3 of those 5 games. He has struggled at Oracle Park this year with a 4.73 ERA. A lot of base runners allowed at Oracle Park. And the Padres, they've made improvements against right-handed pitchers in really in the month of June so far. Good numbers offensively. I think they'll be able to get to DeSclafani. And even though we don't know an official starter right now for San Diego, this pitching staff and bullpen's been solid this year. So I'm willing to take the Padres on the money line in this game on the road. Next up, we see the final game for Tuesday's card in Major League Baseball. The Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Los Angeles Angels. Going to be a 10:05 Eastern start time on TBS. Reed Detmers and Clayton Kershaw are your starters. You know, both teams have hit lefties in the last 30 days pretty well. You know, Dodgers #1 in baseball in team OPS and isolated power, but the Angels not too far behind in those statistics either. And you know, for me, the Dodgers, I'm just a little bit concerned with them as of late. We saw them get swept by the Giants at home, and their offense really was not, didn't have a good series at all. So I'm get shut out 15-0. They lost 7-3 in the final game of that one. And even though they took the series against the Chicago White Sox, I didn't think it was a very impressive series either against the Chicago team who's got a well below 500 record this year. So now going on the road against Reed Detmers, who's been in pretty good form as of late. You know, overall this season, not the best numbers, a 1-5 record with that 4.48 ERA. But in his last game, 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts against the Texas Rangers, a very good lineup. And then his previous start, 5 2/3 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts against the Chicago Cubs. He's been, back-to-back good outings. I think he's good enough here. Kershaw wasn't the best last time out, giving up a good amount of sharp contact and 2 home runs in that game against the White Sox. So give me the Los Angeles Angels here on the money line at home. And that's it. Those are the games for Tuesday in Major League Baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.